It's likely that one of the most controversial chapters in my book, Destination Eden, is the one which focuses on the issue of keeping animals as pets. I think that whenever we take on the responsibility of looking after a pet, there are inevitably going to be moral issues which we'll be forced to face and likely compromises which we'll be forced to make. In my book, I focus on pets in general and predominantly on cats and dogs. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be talking solely about cats. Now, cats, as we know, are a carnivorous species, and I think it's for this reason that numerous times in the past when I've debated this on and offline with people, I've been told that feeding a cat a plant-based diet should be considered animal abuse. Now, of course, the huge flaw in this argument is that if it's genuinely animal abuse to feed a cat a plant-based diet, then what of all the animals which land in the feed bowl of a cat which is being fed a flesh-based diet? I think surely one must recognise that there's a much greater moral issue of animal abuse that's going on when one feeds an animal flesh foods than if one feeds it plant-based foods. The same people have been often very quick to retort that this is not true because the ingredients in cat food are inferior and byproducts and should be considered as waste products in many ways, and therefore they're not contributing to animal abuse because these products would be thrown away if they weren't put in the cat food. Now, I understand where these people are coming from. There is a certain degree of truth in what they're saying because it is often the case that inferior animal products end up in the feed of dog and cat food. We'll get items of animals which are considered unfit for human consumption. There'll be things like the hearts of animals or the lungs of animals, maybe even the intestines of animals, likely other parts of the dead animals which are considered unfit for human consumption and would never end up on the butcher's counter. But one cannot rightly say that these are waste products if they're being sold. I've heard people try to argue that leather is a waste product or a byproduct and it's therefore okay to use it because if it wasn't used it would be thrown away. But the whole point is that whatever isn't used is going to be thrown away, but if it's being used, it's no longer a waste product. It's like the bones of animals. At one point in time, they weren't used, but they found clever ways to market them and sell them to public. They make them into little jelly beans. They grind them up and make a flour from them and make candies. But these aren't rightfully waste products, not anymore. Nothing is a waste product if it's being sold. Now, there are people out there that are aware of this and they have chosen to feed their cats a plant-based diet. Before you dismiss this as being complete and utter nonsense, I want to assure everybody that it is very possible to feed a cat a plant-based diet. There are supplements out there that can aid one in doing that. There are forums, there are web pages that will discuss how this can be done. The cat can still get a balanced diet and it can still live a long and healthy life. But even if one feeds one's cat a plant-based diet, and I've got to say that the people that do this are really in the minority. The other thing that springs to mind is that cats are generally given a certain degree of autonomy. They're allowed to come into their house when they want to, they're allowed to go into the garden when they want to. And unlike dogs, if there's a fence around the garden, they're not restricted by it. They jump the fence, they go into next door's garden, they'll maybe have territories which spread over several blocks. And I think most cats, once they get outside and once they left to their own devices, they revert to their true nature, which is one of the carnivore, and they start hunting small animals, birds, reptiles, rodents too. When I grew up in England in the 60s and 70s, living in a large town there, it was very common for me to walk down the street and see birds of all manner that would be making their nests in the rooftops and flying around. You'd wake up to their chorus in the morning. There'd be sparrows and pigeons and blackbirds and thrushes and swallows and swifts, and probably a lot of other birds. My parents, who still live in the same town, they've informed me that it's very, very rare to see birds these days. Now, I don't for one moment think that cats must take their sole responsibility for their disappearance, but I have absolutely no doubt that they have played a huge role in the disappearance of these animals, because they're left to their own devices. They go outside and they kill animals. I think there's a lot of cat owners, including vegan cat owners, who are likely going to sort of turn a blind eye to this and say, well, it's nothing to do with them, it's the cat that's doing this. You know, it's the cat's issue. The cat's out there doing what it's supposed to do. But I don't think this is really facing things quite honestly, because if a dog owner has a dog that bites somebody, then it has to be the responsibility of the dog owner, the fact that the dog has bitten somebody, and the fact that it isn't a human who's been attacked by these domestic cats doesn't mean that we should just sort of ignore it and pretend it isn't happening. I think that whenever we take on the responsibility of bringing a cat into the environment where we live, we have to be aware that that cat is basically a serial killer. He's going to be going out there and killing whatever he can. That's just his nature. So I think that we, as humans that take on the responsibility for looking after these carnivorous animals, must acknowledge that what we're doing is not all about saving the life of an animal or being nice to an animal, especially not if we're jeopardizing the lives of other animals. Now, there's even a smaller minority of people who, very aware of this, go out of their way to keep their cats inside. They feed them a 100% plant diet from the get-go, and I think these people will probably thumbs up to them, because the way I see it, they're causing the least harm to animals in general. They're doing the best that they can, given the fact that they've got these animals in their life and that they're looking after them. But I have to say, I honestly believe that we all have a birthright to the outside. We all have a right to come and go as we choose. We all have a right to move around unrestricted. I think that once we incarcerate another being, it has to be recognised that there's a moral issue going on here. I mean, we've taken this animal and we're keeping it enclosed, and we're not letting it do what comes natural to it. I think this is something that has to be acknowledged, even if what they're doing is something which we don't like. There's going to be a large percentage of cat owners who are going to spay and neuter their cat. I understand the reasoning for why this happens. It's seen from a certain point of view. There is a valid reason for doing this, but nevertheless, I have to say I recognise that there's an abuse that's going on here, because I understand that if there were to be some alien race that were to land on the earth and to look at what humans have done and say, there's 7 billion of you here, and look at what you've done. You know, look at the way you've destroyed the environment. Look at the number of species which have gone extinct because of you. Look at the way you've polluted the waters and the airs. I think that there's too many humans, and I've got a solution. I'm going to have you in one by one and castrate you so that you can't reproduce anymore. Would you, in all seriousness, think that this is a valid solution to the problem? Because it's very true, everything I've just said. We have done all these things as humans. Would these aliens have a right to start taking us in and neutering us? We're humans, and there's too many of us. Let's castrate them. Is that a valid solution? Put your hand up if you think it is. I don't think that many people will be putting their hands up. Actually, I think there'll be a few people sticking their hands up, because there's always people out there that think that humans shouldn't exist. But when it comes to the crunch, I reckon there's very few that would want to be first up in line to get castrated. Yeah, there is this thing I want to talk about too. The issue with the pounds. People may believe that they're doing an animal a favour by rescuing an animal from a pound, but that can only be true if one takes it home and doesn't under any circumstances jeopardize the lives of other animals. I honestly don't believe that by rescuing an animal from a pound that one is really helping the problem. I think one is actually becoming part of the problem by doing that, because there's already this inbuilt feeling that humans have that keeping animals as pets is perfectly normal. So whenever we go out of our way to take an animal from a pound and bring it home, we're just becoming one more person that owns a pet. And in doing so, we're helping to ingrain into our children that doing so is perfectly normal and natural. Therefore, the problem of the pounds is not going to go away. They're going to be there as long as people keep thinking that keeping animals as pets is perfectly normal. Until it's recognized that doing so is not normal, the problem is going to continue existing. I honestly believe that the only solution to this problem is to not participate, to wash one's hands of it and say, I don't want any part of it. I don't want to adopt a dog or a cat. This is something that has to be realized, really, that a cat is like the complete opposite of us vegans. They're carnivores, we're vegans. I know that there's vegans out there that have lived or living with omnivore humans, and they come on the internet and they complain about the fact that they're cooking up meat in the kitchen, and or that they may be hunting and going out and killing animals. They don't like this, you know. They're disgusted by these habits of these people. And yet you have the same kind of people that invite a cat into their house, and this cat is fully carnivorous. And not only will they invite it in, but they'll go out of their way to buy animal products for that cat to eat. And then they'll turn a blind eye to the fact that this cat is going out and killing everything, and they'll post on the internet cute fluffy pictures of these cats. They sort of, I think there's a huge denial that's going on here. That you want in your vegan family to have vegan people, not vegan family members, not family members that are going to be going out killing. These are issues which have to be faced honestly. I hope that I've made some kind of sense in what I'm saying here, and I hope that I'm not coming across as a complete raving lunatic. These are issues which are, like everything that's vegan, really, I take it very seriously. I think that we all should strive to do the least possible harm that we can. Choosing not to keep an animal as a pet is the best way to cause the least possible harm. The issue of the animals in the pounds, which I've already said, I don't think it's ever going to go away so long as we keep thinking that keeping animals is normal and natural. And people will kind of say, well, what of those animals in the pound? What do you think will happen to them? And I know it's terrible. I know that these animals are going to be killed, but it's not my responsibility to take on the burden of those animals. I don't want to take on the burden of any animals that are out there. They're not there because of my actions. They're not there because of me. I'm doing everything within my power to not contribute to that system. And that's the only way that I can look at it. You know, people have tried to say that I've got a responsibility to look after these animals and do what I can for them. I'm doing the best I can by not participating.